What's up everyone, and welcome to the first part of 5 known as TFS Boost Fab. This is going to be a special segment related to everything you need to know about building turbo manifolds, intercooler piping, and everything else related to the turbocharger fabrication world. Now to kick it off, we're going to start with one very important tool that you're going to want to have in your arsenal of tools when you start fabricating turbo manifolds. It's Purge blocks, only today on the Fabrication series. Purge blocks actually serve more than one purpose. Now, aside from giving a passage for the argon gas to get into the part that you're welding to shield the backside of it, they also serve exceptionally well as a heat sink. What exactly is a heat sink? Consider this. A part like this flange that we're going to use for the turbo manifold that we're going to build in an upcoming episode here, this is actually very thin and there's not a whole lot of metal on it. So if we get a lot of heat onto this part with nothing to hold the backside or no way for the heat to actually transfer or dissipate into another piece, it can warp, it can distort. And every time that you weld something, say something like a round pipe on a turbo manifold, it will pull, twist, and move and change the shape of that metal. So to avoid warping and let a gate for the argon gas to get in and out of, we need to machine something, in this case a big block of aluminum, to allow the gas to get in and out and let the heat actually transfer off of your workpiece and into another part to allow it to dissipate. How are we going to do that? Well, I'll show you. The manifold we're going to be building is for the EVO 4 through 9. Now before you get started on anything, you're going to need to figure out where all of your holes are going to have to go. Now you can use the factory cast manifold to measure all of it out and map all of it out to where you need to go, or you can use the flanges themselves since they're going to be the same as the actual manifold that you're building for. I like to use the flanges personally because it's a lot easier to measure these out than a big clumpy cast manifold. Now when I take the measurements, we mapped all of it out into our CAD program with each measurement based on the 4-inch wide block of aluminum. Now all of these are going to get translated over onto the mill, and this will tell us exactly where we need to place all of our holes. Now all of the holes are going to be popped into a block of 1-inch thick by 4-inch wide 6061 aluminum that has been provided by metal supermarkets. Now the awesome thing about metal supermarkets, aside from having just about any metal you could want to work with for your project, is they sell in small quantity with no minimum order. That translates into less material sitting on the shelf getting wasted and more money in your pocket. It's really a no-brainer. So head over to metalsupermarkets.com, check out their selection, and show me what you can build with your small quantity order. So we're going to knock this down to size. We'll start with our head flange. It needs to be 16 inches long, and our turbo flange needs to be 5 inches long. So let's get to cutting. Look at that. Love it. We'll get our 5-inch length cut, this one being for our turbo flange. Alrighty, let's get these edges cleaned up and we'll start drilling. Now, extruded aluminum actually holds its shape quite well, so we're not going to worry too much about squaring it off in the vise, but I do need to knock down the edges, and I'm going to use this file here to do that. That'll ensure that we get a nice clean edge that we're going to use as our reference, make sure that we get our holes lined up just right. Alright, so let's start by setting up our metal. I'm going to use one of my nice big beefy machined parallels. Get it kind of set up right about where it needs to be. We're not going to worry too much about squaring it up inside of the mill because all it really needs to do is have our holes here and keep our flange. Flange, when we stick it on top of here, you kind of get the idea of about where we want it. And I measure this out so the flange is relatively centered onto our actual purge block itself. So set that aside, and let's look at the dimensions of the holes that we have to work with. This is everything, every hole in every spot where we need to actually drill it. It's on a 4-inch tall piece by 16 inches long, and each one of our holes is referenced from the left side. So the same thing with the bottom side. All of our height measurements, which we have here, here, and here, are all measured off of the bottom side. So we need to find out, so we can put into our digital readout up top there, where each one of our holes start in reference to our piece. And we're going to do that by using an edge finder. Now the edge finder has already been outfitted into the mill here. Now notice it has kind of a little bit of a wobble. It has a little bit of an off-axis work or movement to it. Now, do yourself a favor when you get yourself an edge finder, do not, and I absolutely mean do not ever pull down on the inside of this, because what's inside holding it together and lets it wobble is a spring. And if you stretch that spring out, you break your edge finder. So don't don't make that that mistake that a lot of people have before. So what we're going to do is we're going to move our piece or our edge finder right to the edge of our part. We're going to start with the y-axis. Now notice it has a little bit of a wobble here as we turn the machine on. And that wobble right there is going to straighten out first, and what we're going to look for is waiting for the edge finder to actually jump. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch it and we're going to listen. First telltale sign is it's going to straighten itself out. Now we're going to very slowly move it in there and wait for it to jump. Right there. Okay? We'll do this one more time so you can see it again. Straightens out just a little bit. Right where it touches. That's where it jumps. That is right there on the edge. So we'll go to our y-axis, 0 out. Now the diameter of that edge finder is 2/10 of an inch, or 0.2 inches. So what we need to do to make sure we actually get centered here is to move our piece 1/10 or 0.1 inches. We're going to 0 out again. Now the center of that edge finder is right over the edge of our part, 0'd out. So every dimension that we go on for our height or our y-axis is going to be exact. So we need to do the same thing for the x-axis. Set this up. Right back near the edge. We're going to work it in. And again, we're going to watch and we're going to listen. So the first telltale sign is getting close. It straightens out. Right there. Now we're going to slowly move it in and wait for it to jump. Right there. We'll go up to our X. 0 out. And once again, we'll move in 1/10 of an inch. Now if you overshoot it, make sure you overshoot it by a lot so you can get your backlash out and get right back to where you need to be. So move it down 0.1 inches, 0 out on X. Now, no matter which way we move the table, from this point out, every dimension is going to be dead center exactly where we need it to be. So let's switch this one out real quick, get rid of the edge finder, pop the drill bit in there, let's get some holes cut. Get the collet out of here. Switch all this out. Get our drill in here. Now this drill chuck, very, very simple. Just like any other for the most part, key lock chuck. Get it all in there, tighten this all down, grab the drill bit, throw it in there, should be good to go. Now because the flange is going to be bolted to the purge block itself, we're going to drill out the correct size hole for the tap that we're going to use, which is an 8mm. So the size hole that we're going to use is actually a 17/64 once you actually cross it over into that one. So we're going to chuck it up, get it all set. Now, looking at our dimensions here, the areas that we have to go for our first hole, which is right here on this side, is 0.605 on your x-axis and 0.988 on your y-axis. So what we're going to do, we're going to move our table up, 0.988. Slowly get it up there. 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're going to move on our x-axis until we hit 0.605. Now we're at the location for our first hole. A little bit of oil on there. Clean this off real quick. Now the next spot that we have is 3.675 inches away from our first hole. So when you add that up with our 0.605 plus the 3.675, we get 4.28 inches that we need to move up on our DRO. Move it all the way over until we get to 4.28 inches. Right there. Now we're ready to drill our second hole. All right, hole number 2. We're going to keep on going down a lot and add them up every single time until we get all of our holes in. hole on the bottom row brings us to 15.13 inches after we add it all up. Getting close. 15, 1, 3. As we go back to start from square one, we're going to do all the top row. Get it all reset. Alright, so now we're going to move it up and wide to do the top row. We're going to move it up till it goes to 3.023 inches on the y-axis. Lock my table down on the y. We're going to move our piece in until we read 2.450 inches. Now we'll drill the top row. Just the same as before, we'll add them all up. The next hole position is 6.14 inches. So we'll get this set up. 3, 4. And we drill. Alrighty. Now all the holes are lined up for the flange. We'll do a test fit real quick. Make sure that we're actually fitting right where we need to be. Look at that. They're all right where they need to be. Perfect. So now in order to actually have it purged, we need to have a hole in each one of these sections where the actual flange ports go. So we're going to have to drill it down into here a certain distance, and then we'll flip it up, rotate the part, and drill back down again so we can actually get the ports for the purge itself. Alright, so I'm going to change this out to a smaller diameter, which actually I noted on the chart that it was supposed to be at an 1/8 inch, which I've actually expanded it to 3/16 of an inch. And the first point that we're going to start at is 1.95 inches from the left on our x-axis. So we're going to move up to 1.95 inches. Perfect. Now we're also going to move, I noted on here that we're going to go to 1.928 inches from the bottom on the y-axis. So we'll move it down, 1.928, which I overshot. I'll get the backlash. 1.928 inches. And this is the location of our first hole for our purge port. Now this is going to only go into half of the metal, so we're going to drill to a depth of 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do is set it up to where it's just touching on the part. I'm going to set my scale here to where I know that I'm only going to drill down into a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to start at this 4-inch mark here. We're going to drill right down to here at the 1/2 inch mark. Let's do the other 3. Here comes our last hole. Alright, so now that we have it out, we need to drill our holes down from the top so that way we have an area for a passage for all of the gas to actually purge out of there. So what we're going to do is reset it. Stick it into our vise, and since we knocked it off all of our measurements, we actually have to run the edge finder on it yet again so that we make sure that we get exactly the right position. Alright, chuck my drill bit back up in here again. Now we're going to go to half of the thickness of our 1-inch piece of aluminum. So we're going to move it onto the DRO until we cover at 0.5 inches, which is half of our thickness. And that's exactly where we drilled into it earlier. Now, one thing that I'm going to point out here is I'm actually going to take this off of the area where it was supposed to go, and I can give you a visual here. But let's take a look at where the drill bit is actually going in relation to this hole and this hole. Notice that our purge holes are actually offset only slightly, and we had to do that in order to not drill through the bolt hole for the actual flange itself. So it's one of those things that might be worth noting. So let's get our reset here, get our last hole in, up to 1/2 inch. Drill this one out. And there's our purge block. Now all we really have to do is clean these holes out a little bit and then tap all these other ones, and we can bolt our flange up to it and we're ready to purge. Alright, now we just finished tapping all of these holes and we can test fit our head flange. Now what you just saw me doing there with the drill is actually a technique, or a pretty common practice actually. It's called power tapping, where you take a tap and you chuck it up into your drill, or you can sometimes, if you get the correct style of tap, you can throw it on your milling machine actually. And it's actually pretty common to see people doing that. Now if you're not comfortable with the concept of power tapping, go ahead and do it by hand, and which in this case all we really did was just make sure that when it goes into the drill there, it's loosely fit, so that way if it does grab or snag, it won't actually snap the tap off of it, it'll actually just spin there. So let's have this flange have a look here as it's fitted up. It looks like all of our bolt holes filled right where they need to be. Everything's good on there. All of our purge ports are right where they need to be as well. Now as far as tapping goes, on the top side I also popped these holes over and we tapped it with 1/8 inch pipe thread. The reason why I chose 1/8 inch pipe thread is because we can fit different pieces inside of here. We can actually plug them up if we didn't want to actually have the purge flow through. We could put valves on them to kind of control the amount of purge or the flow that we get with it. We can actually plumb all 4 of these together into one port and use it as our feed, or we can even install little bronze filter elements inside of there, which will push the oxygen out a little bit easier than it will with the argon, because argon is a little bit more dense than oxygen, so that'll save some of it on the inside of it. There's lots of options you can do with the purge ports on top. Now with the head flange all finished up, we're going to get over on the turbo flange, and to kind of speed things up here a little bit, we're just going to kind of blow right through it, but the same rules and concepts as apply to it, and you'll see me go through all of that. So let's get that turbo flange knocked out real quick. Put our feed port in there. How nicely this lines up. I'm liking this one. Now the best part about this is, even though we're running into a divided flange, if we lined up our holes just right for our feed line, it should cover both of those ports. So let's set that up over top. Look at how nice and neat that fits. And both of our holes are exposed, which means we'll get gas in both sides of the turbo manifold while we purge it. There we go. Purge blocks. Now, if you have any questions about purge blocks, go ahead and drop them in the comments box below, and I'll make sure I can get back to you on it. You can also head over to the FabricationSeries.com website Hit me up on Facebook.com/Fabricator Series or follow along on Instagram at the.fabricator. Now in the description below here, I'll have all that contact info for you. Once again, I'd like to thank Metal Supermarkets very much for providing the metal for this episode. Head over to metalsupermarkets.com and check out that really awesome selection. And don't forget to follow along and check out the other episodes that are related to TFS Boost Fab. Check out that hashtag and you'll find every single one of them as they upload. I'd like to thank you guys for watching as always, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.